Let's now cross over to the Mövenpick Ambassador Hotel, where the forum is just about to begin. Joy Business's Sheila Tamaklo is standing by to take us there. Sheila, has the forum begun?
Yes, Daniel, the forum just began. So I'm currently at the Mövenpick Ambassador Hotel, where the GIPC, the USAID at FinGap, is organizing the Agribusiness Forum to discuss the policies that the government has come up to develop the agriculture sector. As we know, the vision of this government has been to mechanize agriculture as well as improve productivity and increase the profitability of farmers in the country. Now, as part of this, we have seen government launch some initiatives like the Planting for Food and Jobs, the One District, One Factory, as well as other initiatives. So this particular program is going to analyze these policies as well as look at ways to attract investments into Ghana's agriculture sector. So the program, as you can see, has just begun. So I'll be handing over to the main stage for us to hear the rest of today's event.
The second panel session will follow and focus on investment and finance for agri sector. While the final panel discussion will discuss agro investments. The first half of the forum will be over for lunch, to be followed by a business-to-business session. That's where the action is. That's where the businesses will be doing business with the financial institutions, as well as business advisory service providers standing by to support you, package your deals, and send them to financial institutions for financing considerations. That said, let's begin the program by...
I'd like to invite Charles Opoku-Mensah, member of the GIPC team, to give the opening prayer.
Yeah, please, shall we bow our heads for a short word of prayer? Thank you, Father, for this wonderful time. We commit our deliberations into your hands. We ask that you guide us through successfully. In Jesus' mighty name, we've prayed with thanksgiving. Amen.
Thank you, Charles. I'd like to welcome the CEO of Ghana Investment Promotion Center, Mr. Yofi Grant, to give the opening address.
One of the most stable countries in West Africa since its transition to multi-party democracy in 1992, with strong and continuously improving institutions of good governance. Home to one of West Africa's largest ports, Tema, with the most efficient air, road, and sea connections to the sub-region, and with 540 kilometers of coastline and sunshine all year round. Ghana is ranked the best place for doing business in West Africa and remains your gateway to accessing the ECOWAS market of over 350 million people. Ghana has 8 million hectares of arable land, supported by a wide network of water bodies across the country, making it a region ready for large-scale mechanized agriculture. Our drive to become a leading agro-industrial nation is expanding opportunities in the agro-processing sector as government continues to invest in technologies and new policies to support the rapid development of this industry. Recent discoveries of oil and gas in commercial quantities and the introduction of more sustainable sources of power like solar, wind, and thermal will significantly increase the country's energy resources, making our goal of becoming a net exporter of power and fuel by 2020 easily attainable. With a mobile penetration rate of 136% and data penetration at 70%, the highest number of fiber optic points in the West African sub-region, and a fintech industry worth over $8 billion, Ghana's ICT sector ensures the highest quality of global connectivity. Ghana's growing consumer market is providing compelling reasons for investing in the services sector. A growing middle class with increasing purchasing power is creating demand for a wider variety of sophisticated services in healthcare, finance, and education. A quality tourism destination with world-class facilities, 540 kilometers of pristine sandy beaches, and several ecotourism sites opening up across the country. Ghana's tourism sector is one of the fastest growing. Ghana has the right legal and regulatory framework for doing business in Africa and is committed to pursuing reforms that increase foreign direct investment. The government of Ghana, through the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, is committed to driving investment environment reforms to improve the ease of doing business for both local and foreign investors. Ghana is moving swiftly to make its vast potential real. Ghana is on the go. We are open for business.
A very good morning to you all. And I, first of all, need to apologize that the delay in starting was due to me. I was running against events that I had scheduled in the morning. But I'm happy to see everybody here. So welcome once again. Mr. Agric Value, Chief of Party, USAID, FinGap, Ministers of State who are here, heads of missions, Nananum, Nime, and Name, if they are here or not here, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for honoring this invitation to be here. We all know the importance of agriculture. Indeed, recently I read somewhere that a nation that cannot feed itself is a nation at risk. And as we stand here, indeed, we do not feed ourselves. I'll give you some stark revelations about agriculture. Many years ago, agriculture was the headline of our economy. 60 years after independence, although we claim to be an agricultural nation, agriculture's growth to GDP has been trending downwards year after year, and agricultural growth has virtually gone in the negative. And yet, last year, we imported food to the tune of $2.2 billion. That can never be a satisfactory position, especially when we have 8 million hectares of arable land lying fallow in the northern parts of Ghana. And we have 4 very viable breadbasket areas in Ghana: the northern region, the Accra Plains, the Volta region. They're all there, ready to be farmed, and yet we are importing our food. We import over $600 million of rice, not to mention sugar, when we have all the necessary inputs that can make us self-sufficient in this area. But that is the reason why we focus on agriculture. Almost every bit of research on Africa has stated that for the continent to make it, agriculture must lead the way. And agriculture is almost $1 trillion business in the world today for Africa. And so we need to refocus. But refocusing means that we need to overcome certain challenges that we have. As I started saying, agriculture is important for 3 reasons, really. One is food security. The other is poverty alleviation. Because if truly, as estimated, that about 60% of our population is engaged in agriculture through its value chain, then it means to create wealth, you must focus on agriculture. And you must highlight agriculture in your economic development. The third part of that leg is that through agriculture, we can greatly improve our GDP growth. And so it's important that we refocus once again. And this workshop seminar is one that will bring to the fore a discussion about how do we finance agriculture. I must at this point commend the USAID, FinGap. I know they've been in Ghana, they've been our partners in agriculture. I remember many years back as an investment banker in private equity, going around the country and seeing all these pack houses and feeder roads that were actually sponsored and financed by the USAID. And I always used to wonder that, but why aren't we doing it ourselves? I remember going to the north of Ghana and seeing the work that has been put in by JICA and many of the other foreign missions. And I do say that we as Ghanaians need to pick up on that, hold their coattails in this development effort, and actually do what we have to do, feed ourselves. Because if we do not feed ourselves, then we are not a confident nation. And so I think that today we are here to discuss a number of things. I would like to just, before we get on to business, because we're running late, I would like to focus on some of the 5 key areas that research has found to inhibit agricultural growth in Ghana. And the first, of course, is finance. Access to finance. And as you might all well know, most of our farmers are simple people who are not into massive commercial farming. Most of our farmers are subsistence farmers who only plant to feed themselves and their families, and then whatever is left is sold. But there's every reason to redirect them into commercial farming. For most of them, the finance problem they have is access to credit and insurance. I am happy to say that through initiatives USAID, again, we are seeing this conference happen, which will highlight the need for finance and how agriculture can be financed. Because many finance people think that agriculture is the most difficult place to finance. Yes, it is, if there are no necessary interventions to make it scientific and therefore predictable. Then it's difficult. But if you can do the other inputs, then financing agriculture is not as difficult as it should be. I'm also happy to say that we've seen quite a number of investments coming to the microinsurance side of things that will enable our farmers be more confident with some of the things they do. The other transversal area that I would like to speak about is inputs. And by inputs, I mean resources like seeds, having the appropriate seeds that will guarantee you some productivity and production, having fertilizer use, and I dare say once again that our use of fertilizer in this country falls very short of what the expectations are or what the global standards are. I'm told that we use less than 25% of what the average OECD country uses to fertilize its ground. And then the third bit that is lacking is mechanization. Most of our farmers are still relying on the hoe and the cutlass, which can only do so much. But there's everything to show that mechanized agriculture is much more productive than having the sort of agrarian agriculture that we have. The big question is, how do we convert many of these very simple farmers as smallholders to imbibe mechanization as part of their working models? And I'm happy again to say that there are some very innovative innovations in the market, like trotro tractor, where farmers can actually dial for a tractor which they cannot afford to come, do its work. And I think that model is going to be seen across the value chain of agriculture. The third transversal area is infrastructure. Having the connection network such that you can have goods move from farm gates to market. Having the roads and the haulage system to make it efficient, enable the farmer make some living out of his product. Over there, the pressure on feeder roads is a major issue. And I'm happy once again to say that with a significant railway project that is going to be put in place, there will be access and farmers can reach their markets in good time. And then, of course, there's irrigation. And because government recognizes this, it actually put across a new policy called One Village, One Dam. And I think for avoidance of doubt, many of you are already in agriculture. You know what a dam means. A dam doesn't necessarily mean like Kosovo. A dam can be a little barrier that will hold water that can be used all year round. This will actually improve productivity for the farmers so they can actually plant all year round and make some money. So it's a significant policy. Then, of course, the fourth is capabilities. How are we helping our farmers improve their yields? How are we helping them adopt more scientific, reliable ways of farming? How are we providing extension works such that they have information available? Is there any research and development going into agriculture? And then, of course, delivery. How are we helping our farmers deliver on what they are supposed to do? Deliver their products to the market. And how, do they know how to do it? Do they understand what it means when it says that you have to get your goods on the shelf within 24 hours? These are all problems that have beset the agricultural sector. And the last, but not the least, is, of course, the policies that impact on the agricultural sector. And of these, I think the most critical and the most important is land tenure. Once again, government is trying to address this by putting in place a national addressing system that relies on digital mapping through satellite, such that every square meter in this country has a digital address. That will enable proper mapping and proper use of lands and try and separate ownership from usage, in accordance with also a national database that would have everybody biometrically registered, such that when you go on a piece of land, once the project is finished, you know who the real owner is, and you can negotiate and get your business done, as against the practice today where you can buy a plot of land and not be sure that you own it. Or I have bought a piece of land somewhere and I paid for it 3 times. I'm still not sure I own it. So these all affect, our farmers. Then, of course, on the policy side, taxes and incentives. Since we consider agriculture to be critical for a nation's survival, we need to put in the right frameworks for tax and incentives. I do know that the agri sector has some interesting incentives like in tax benefits, but perhaps we need to do more, because that is a foundational sector of the economy that we need to build, upon which we can industrialize and do all the other things. So it's important. And then, of course, the big question of import tariffs. But that is a topic for another day, because it can take the whole day. So I'll leave it here. But I would like to say a big warm welcome to you. Let's be free. Let's be candid. I think there's a lot of goodwill in this room. I would like to say a big thank you from all invited guests from the missions who came here, because they are definitely our partners in development, and we will engage you as much as you engage us. So thank you very much for coming. I am told that actually these days, when you become the MD or CEO of a company, you are directed more than you direct. So my people will have the program for you. Thank you very much for listening, and please enjoy the sessions. Thank you.
Made possible by USAID, from the American people.
Akati Farms, located in the Ashanti region of Ghana, is the country's largest producer of poultry beds and table eggs.
It started like a family business, and now it's a limited equity company. It was tedious those days to get a bank loan. I remember 91, I was looking for 2 million. Eventually they gave us 250. It took me more than 4 months.
Lending to agriculture is risky, and it is still a risky venture.
We're facilitating financing for agribusinesses to get the financing so they can perform their business to the maximum and to the highest capability. What we do is working with financial institutions to keep in mind that agribusiness lending is not as risky as they might think.
We support and encourage financial institutions to lend into our value chains.
FinGap builds the capacity of financial institutions and business advisory services providers to facilitate private finance and investment in the target value chains.
Farmers come to the banks with virtually an unprepared request. Unprepared because the deals are not packing in the form that the bank has.
We realized that there was a missing link. So what we decided to do is to build capacity of the business advice service providers who provide these services to package their proposals properly for these financial institutions.
What we do is that we get good smiles, we package them, mitigating all the risk, and we present them to the financial institution.
Akati Farm received capital investment funds from Barclays Bank to increase its egg-producing poultry population and working capital to pre-finance the production of maize and soy from smallholder farmers in northern Ghana for feed production.
We're taking 5,000 on a daily basis, but we have another commercial farm which has just come on stream. We're able to sell our feed to other farmers at a very competitive price. Next year, we are going to do the processing plant. We are going to increase our outgrower for the small farmers to benefit from our outgrower.
Mr. Fred, for this, I can't see much in the month. If you're too long, I mean, yes, you got a post.
Good bank. Look for the money. Make very good use of that money. You can pay back.
FinGap has shown the way. With or post FinGap, we will continue to support the agriculture sector and the maize and soya value chain for that matter.
Thank you for the video, and thank you, Mr. Yofi Grant, for your welcome address. Our first panel, as earlier mentioned, is on agribusiness, and will discuss the topic opportunities in Ghana. Opportunities in Ghana's agriculture value chain, planting for food and jobs initiative as a catalyst to national industrialization. Moderating this session is the Deputy Minister for Food and Agriculture and a Member of Parliament for the Walewale constituency. Prior to this, he was a member of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Food and Agriculture and Cocoa Affairs. He was a lecturer of economics and entrepreneurship development at the University of Development Studies, and also a district development planning officer of the Bongo District Assembly. Dr. Babangui holds a PhD in agriculture economics from the University of Ghana. He is currently a member of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Education and on Government Assurance. Sir, welcome. On the panel, you're invited to. A round of applause, please. On the panel for this session will be Honorable Robert Ahumka-Lindsay, Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Dr. Tietu, Chief Operating Officer of the Savannah Accelerated Development Authority. Thank you. Mrs. Letitia Osafo-Addo, CEO of Samba Foods. Welcome. Mr. Tom Gambra, Founder and Managing Director of Premium Foods Limited. And welcome. Mr. William Awuku-Ahayadome, Managing Director of Agric Ghana Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Yofi Grant will step in for Honorable Robert Ahumka-Lindsay. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam MC, the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, Chief of Party, USAID, all development partners present, traditional leaders present here, ministers of state present, co-panelists. It's heartwarming that the government of the New Patriotic Party, led by His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, is focusing so much on agriculture, and it's also exciting that a lot of other stakeholders, including other ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as our development partners and civil society organizations, are all focusing on agriculture now. So we in the Ministry of Food and Agriculture are excited that there is more discourse on agriculture now. And I couldn't more than agree with the Chief Executive when he says that we have all the potentials in agriculture, but we are not moving at the expected pace. It is, however, instructive to note that even though there is a decline in the share of agriculture in GDP in Ghana, that might turn out to be our long-term plan or target, because in development history, most nations, when they are well developed, the share of is symptomatic of a nation that has not gotten its priorities right. Because currently, the services sector takes a chunk of our GDP. And if we were to develop through our normal development path, I would have expected that the manufacturing sector would have taken much space, because we have more resources and raw materials in agriculture to have fed the manufacturing industry. So if the agricultural sector's share in GDP was declining because the manufacturing sector was rising, then we would have known that we are adding so much value to our agricultural produce, and therefore that is why the sector share in GDP is declining. But currently, we have even witnessed a decline in the growth of agriculture, which is very sad. And therefore, I couldn't more than agree with the Chief Executive Officer that we have to get our priorities right. So we are glad that USAID is supporting this process, especially the thorny issue of agricultural financing. And I was glad to note that Barclays Bank is in collaboration with the USAID to support our farmers. We welcome this, and we expect more growth in that respect. And so I would like to welcome my co-panelists on this program, and to give them some space to at least make some statements within 5 minutes each on the topic at hand, that is opportunities in Ghana's agriculture value chain, planting for food and jobs initiative, a catalyst for national industrialization. So welcome co-panelists to this program, and we expect that this discussion will give us some inputs for us to feed our policy on agriculture. Thank you. So beginning with the first panelist on my left, Tom Cabral.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This morning, I want to share something with you, and it has to do with the spirit of the Planting for Food and Jobs policy direction, which we as a company, but we feel that the Planting for Food and Jobs is a critical government policy intervention long expected to ultimately transform Ghana agriculture that will eventually spur the industrialization of the economy and to create jobs and boost incomes. This will ultimately get people out of poverty. This morning I'm going to situate my discussion on rice and how we can harness rice through the effective policy implementation of the Planting for Food and Jobs to create a vibrant local rice economy with multiplying effects to equal or exceed the $600 million that we spend every year to import rice while saving Ghana valuable foreign exchange. Now, the background of my discussion is it's about premium foods, how we got into the rice business adventure. About 6 years ago, in 2011, Premium Foods Limited, the company that I manage, decided to enter the rice milling business and to contribute to Ghana becoming rice self-sufficient within 5 years and ultimately become net exporter of rice. As usual, we took the value chain approach and involved Crops Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, to develop a rice variety that is high yielding, number one, drought resistant or drought tolerant, aromatic with intermediate amylose levels. Crop Research at that time had a small quantity of foundation seed for the IR841, later to be named Agra rice, which is lowland rice variety that has just passed adaptation trials and ready for on-farm trials and release. Premium Foods purchased and took the 6 bags of the foundation seed to our farmer groups organized by the USAID project in the Tono irrigation facility in Navrongo. The 6 bags was multiplied into 100 tons of certified seed and sold to farmers to produce grains to feed our rice mill in Kumasi. The first year was hugely successful. Farmers' yields averaged 6 tons per hectare, just as the researchers promised, and our warehouses were full to the brim. In the second year, our farmers had similar yields. However, this time, the rain-fed rice crop in the 3 northern regions didn't do so well. So our farmers decided to unilaterally side sell, and suddenly our warehouses were empty and our mill silent. We temporarily suspended our rice adventure after spending approximately $1 million with nothing to show for the investment, except the consolation that the 6 bags of the foundation seed that we took from an old lady farmer called Abina Kusasi at the Crop Research Institute research field had made IR841 rice variety, now named Agra rice, the most popular and well sought after lowland rice variety in town among farmers and consumers. We went back to re-engage with the Crop Research Institute to find a solution to our year 2 problem. We were rightly informed that Crop Research Institute had expertise in crop science and not behavioral science. After a series of deliberations, we agreed to utilize breeding science to solve a behavioral problem. Now, the research solution. Coincidentally, at that time, Ghana had obtained a $3.1 million loan from the AFDB to disseminate Nereka rice upland varieties, and the market did not accept them. So AGRA gave $120,000 grant to Crop Research Institute to breed upland rice. We therefore agreed to combine aroma with long, slender shape, intermediate amylose levels, drought-tolerant, and high-yielding varieties that can be grown anywhere in Ghana and just by anybody. The Crop Research Institute promised to deliver such a rice variety in 4 years, employing conventional rice breeding methods. 2 years later, we were given 14 varieties to do a taste test and compare with the local rice as well as the imported rice. We've selected 7 and for breeding and final stabilization. 2 years ago, thereafter, we received 3 upland rice varieties with maturities of 90 days, 95 days, and 105 days. We are currently harvesting the foundation seeds for multiplication to certified seeds, and the yield potential for the 3 varieties is 6 tons per hectare. These varieties are ready for on-farm trial planting in the next major season. For the first time in history, these varieties were bred in Ghana to solve a Ghanaian problem. These varieties are made in Ghana. Problem solved. Well done, Crop Research Institute. Let's give a round of applause for them. At the current production rate, the farmer, at the current production rate of 3,700 Ghana cedis per hectare, the farmer will earn 48% margin, selling the rice at 1,100 Ghana cedis per ton. Now, we need further investment from the public sector, and these are to invest $500,000 in the next 3 years in the Crop Research Institute for further research into upland rice varieties, provide effective extension services for the rice growers, invest in quality rice mills, about 3 tons per hectare, 3 tons per hour capacity, with cleaners, destoners, grading systems to improve milling yields and ensure quality polishing. Provide financing for these mills at between 3 to 5% over an 8-year period. Organize and train aggregators in identifying and grouping different rice varieties at the farm gate and in logistics and handling methods. Facilitate development of grading systems and standard operating procedures between aggregators, millers, and distributors. Organize and train market women and other young entrepreneurs to become distributors. Facilitate establishment of standard operating procedures for the distributors, including modalities for individual branding. Establish a local rice marketing policy and contract a private marketing company to implement. Now, the cost, $60 million annually over 3 years. And the cost drivers are Crop Research Institute, get their portion, production and harvesting equipment, rice mills and warehousing, marketing and advertisement, distribution and logistics, training and monitoring and evaluation. Now, with this investment, there will be over 10,000 jobs created for young men and women in the distribution channel alone. And Ghana would then save $600 million in annual imports of rice. Thank you for listening.
You're still watching Joy News on Multi TV. My name is Daniel Dazi. This is News Desk. Now we'll go back to the Movenpick Ambassador Hotel, where the Agriculture Agribusiness Summit is currently underway. At the moment, we are having a panel discussion which is being moderated by the Deputy Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Sangri Bambangi.
Of this adventurous organization is embarking on seed production. Thank you very much for the presentation, except that you took almost all our time. So, thank you. So, I have the pleasure to invite Madam Leticia of the Samba Foods, that's the Chief Executive Officer of Samba Foods, to give us her brief presentation in 5 minutes. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. Oh, no, Dr. Moderator. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as I said, my name is Letitia Osafuado, the CEO of Samba Foods, the company that saw the need to commercialize a very simple product in this country, a very common product, the shito sauce. Up until when I started in 1993, after returning home from Germany, I realized that every school-going child needed this product, this shito sauce, especially those in boarding institutions. But there was no ready-made shito on the Ghanaian market, where you go, you pick a jar, you go to school. And that was the market niche that I saw, and I set up, that's making our company the first to commercialize shito, both in the country and everywhere else. Today, I wouldn't be talking much about my company because my paper or my topic was to highlight, the opportunities and then the constraints and then make some recommendations about agribusiness and how the government's bold initiative, would be able to propel Ghana to reclaim its past glory of being a good agricultural country. Ladies and gentlemen, Ghana, no doubt, has a huge potential for the development of agriculture, which, when fully exploited, will significantly contribute to the overall development of the country. Unfortunately, agriculture, which used to be the backbone of the nation's economy, has steadily declined since independence in the 1960s. As I said, my goal is to highlight the challenges, the constraints, and of course, the advantages, and suggest some recommendations of agribusiness in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, among the major causes why there is a continued decline in food production and food security in the country, we can look at the absence of a clear defined agricultural and industrial policy due to the lack of political commitment on the part of policy makers. There is the absence of enabling or conducive atmosphere that induces people to greater efforts to produce more in the agri-sector. We can look at political instability and the rest. There's the absence of basic functioning infrastructure like roads, transportation, utility, electricity, water, name them. The absence of incentives to induce entrepreneurs to achieve greater or higher productivity. Marketing difficulties in accessing market information due to official bureaucracies, both domestic and export. Then, of course, the high taxes and tariffs do not favor local production, but rather encourages the importation of foreign products. The absence of food safety and quality systems, coupled with inefficient, rudimental, and obsolete technology. The overdependence on rain-fed agriculture due to the absence of large-scale irrigation projects and the use of old agricultural methods and implements. Financing, the least said about that, the best. And I'm glad that there are financiers around here that at the end of it all, they will be able to look for innovative way of financing agriculture in the country. And of course, the last being the corruption and other factors which are too numerous to mention also mitigate against the inflow of foreign direct investment which could have been used to the development of agriculture. Looking at the immense opportunity in agribusiness that can contribute to the sustainable development of the nation, we need to realize that ideally only surplus foods can be processed and preserved. This will, of course, eliminate or minimize the post-harvest losses, which can go up to 60–75% during bumper harvest. The raw material processing and preservation contribute significantly to the food security strategies of the nation. Over 80% of the jobs in the private sector are created by the labor force in agribusiness. Therefore, their potential for wealth creation is enormous. Again, most farmers will have ready markets for their produce, thus reducing their poverty status, something which is perfectly in line with the poverty reduction strategies of all governments. The value addition of our farm produce will increase the shelf lives of our products. This will contribute to the food security and food safety of the nation. Again, abundant food will prevent or at least minimize malnutrition and micronutrient deficiency syndrome in children and women in reproductive age, and generally improve the health status of the population. They say a healthy population is a healthy nation. Then, of course, agribusiness can contribute to the overall GDP growth of the economy through export earnings and paying of taxes. For example, the import, as we've been heard today, the import bill of rice alone is over $600 million per year, a figure that oil is supposed to give us a year. Can we imagine what increased rice production will give to Ghana in addition to oil? There will be an increased collaboration between industry, universities, polytechnics, and research institutions. We've heard from the previous speaker the kind of role that the Industrial Research Institute did to their company. These institutions could focus on research and development, technology priorities, infrastructural changes, and identify factors that will ensure continuous flow of agribusinesses. Ladies and gentlemen, the challenges that we have enumerated, the opportunities that are there to be derived, they are not unsurmountable. I would therefore give some recommendations. In fact, when the CEO of the GIPC was speaking, I thought I took my paper from him, but actually I haven't seen him for a long time, so I couldn't have come from him. You need to look at the land tenure system. We need to actually passionately discuss it. There must be large-scale mechanized farming. We need to encourage that, providing irrigation, planting materials, other agricultural inputs and services to ensure continuous supply of raw materials, both in quality and quantity for processing. There has been too much emphasis and support on subsistence level and kitchen operations. Most NGOs are quick and ever ready to provide startup capitals to start new enterprises, but many die before the age of 5 due to the industrial killer diseases, these being lack of targeted, comprehensive support and intervention to grow small micro businesses into large companies. There must be a clear-cut and well-defined policies, industrial policies that to promote the growth and expansion of businesses processing agro raw materials. Winners in these businesses must be identified and given the full support and whatever it takes to grow their companies. And then there must be a legal framework to enforce agreed terms of payments. And lastly, entrepreneurs must be trained in entrepreneurship development, including managerial, financial, and be giving the technical assistance that they deserve. Distinguished invited guests, fellow panel members, the challenges we face in feeding are increasingly urbanized. Population are huge, but it can honestly be tackled. Ghana, given that Ghana has the natural and the human resources to revive the progress in the production of agro products. The criteria and KPIs for success must be mechanized farming, increased production and processing, as well as policy that create incentives for SMEs, smallholder farmers, and agribusinesses to enable them supply adequate, affordable, nutritious food for agricultural products to local, regional, and the global markets. Such efforts will succeed if only sound and concerted policies like the government's flagship initiative, Planting for Food and Job Creation, geared towards accelerated agricultural development and food security, are launched in the country and coordinated regionally. Ladies and gentlemen, we in the private sector want to see the government fostering and enabling competitive and rewarding business environments and ensuring the radical dismantling of bureaucratic restrictions and impediments of operating businesses effectively and profitably in the country. A better organized agri-sector with a better understanding of culturally sustainable development stands to benefit from the changes that are ongoing in the economies everywhere. So far, ladies and gentlemen, trade and commerce has been overwhelming, but that is not very good for the future. The preferred option will relate to industrial development and improvement in agricultural output, so that people can see manufacturing in agribusinesses as a very attractive career option. It is my hope, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that this forum will come up with strategies and modalities that will step up discussions in finding solutions to effectively address Ghana's quest for culturally sustainable development using the opportunities of Ghana's agricultural value chain, Planting for Food and Job Creation Initiative as a catalyst for national development. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Leticia, Chief Executive of Samba Foods. So, I don't want to blame the speaker, but I want us to recognize the fact that the agricultural sector is beset with a myriad of problems. Fortunately, the Almighty God has made it such that everybody has to consume something made from agriculture. And that is the reason why we must all be stakeholders in the development of agriculture. Otherwise, one day, we will wake up, maybe we have a very vibrant banking sector, but we don't have food to eat. We may have a very robust health sector, but if we don't have food to eat, before we realize the health sector will be challenged because there will be malnutrition in this country. We may have a very high quality human resource, but no food to eat. And that is why we all have to join hands to discuss all the problems of agriculture and then contribute our quota. She indicated, just like the Chief Executive Officer, that land tenure is a problem. And you would all agree with me that the problem of land tenure does not lie in the domain of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. A few weeks ago, I was with my Minister at Public Accounts Committee of Parliament to answer questions on the encroachment of agriculture lands that belong to the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, especially for some of our animal production stations in Kintampo, in Ejura, in Nungwa, Amrihia, and some of them are facing encroachment, seriously. A few days ago, one of the managers of the farms came to the ministry that he was even being threatened by some of these encroachers. So it tells you how sometimes even our ministry can be helpless. So we are happy that these issues are being raised and then they will be factored into policy at the highest level. So I will take the opportunity to usher in Mr. William Awuku Ahiadome, who is the Managing Director of Agric Ghana Limited, to give us his perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, our moderator. I'll seek your permission so I can do my standing, so that those on my left-hand side will not be listening to radio instead of watching the speaker. I'll start from the point that the CEO of GIPC left off. There are three critical factors to agriculture practice. And I'm saying practice because the practice is different from the literature. I've been a student of the historical agriculture, and I've learned it. I've read about 3-4 countries and their Agric history. What they did some 200 years ago is where we are today. But we have the privilege of the history, so we can cut the 200 years to probably 12 years. The critical factors are whether the farmer can have access to funding, you can call it money, or the farmer can have access to technology, you can call it know-how, or the farmer will be able to access market when the produce is ready. There's a fourth silent factor that we all didn't think about, because traditionally, when a young farmer goes to farm in a season and fails at the end of the season, his job is simple: to go back to his parents and complain about the low harvest, or talk to the family elders. They will traditionally tell you not to worry, the next season will be good. They will tell you that the wisest person cannot be engaged in agriculture because it's a risky venture. But we can have a fourth factor in our practice, which is crop insurance. So that when everything fails, the young man or the farmer, he can always return to the insurance for something that can bring him back to the break-even. So with these four factors identified, who provides them? If the farmer has all the money, he can buy all the resources. But if one factor, the market, is lacking, his produce will not get to the end consumer. He will be a failure also. If he has the technology but cannot find the funding, it's only a pool of knowledge, which is our case in Ghana. We have the knowledge, we are not practicing. If you come to the technical know-how, which you can also call technology, there's a big distance between our research institutions and our farmers. When I was a student of agriculture, we were made to understand that it begins with the soil, and without the soil, nothing. This is a quote from a textbook, Bill Hull and McCranky, a very important soil science book. Today, our farmers are still practicing agriculture without knowledge of the soils that they are planting on. But the irony of the matter is that you just visit our universities and there's so much research on our soils. They have mapped them, the research findings are on the shelves, inaccessible to the farmers. The farmers are not going to look for it. The researchers are not bringing it to them. There's a gap between knowledge and practice. We used to have a vibrant extension service that was designed to pick knowledge from the researchers and bring that to the doorsteps of the farmers. This ceased working. In a district, there's one pickup, 9 years old, unable to get to the farmers. Motorbikes not available. Those who have, when they fuel and they are able to go, they are not reimbursed for their fuel, so they won't go back. So the knowledge is sitting on the shelves. The farmers are practicing what they can. At the end of it, our yields, and I'm being very practical, our maize yield, over a 16-year period that I gathered from street, was between 1.1 metric tons per hectare and 1.5 metric tons per hectare. That is the average. If you have not followed crop production, you might think that is okay. But why do you have 1.5 metric tons per hectare when USA is getting 10.5 metric tons per hectare? Brazil is also getting 10 metric tons per hectare. Why that gap? Same types of soils, knowledge is available, and yet we are not getting there. It came in as a measure we must begin to look at. I don't see why the departments of our research institutions in agriculture cannot be renamed. I would suggest that if you are crop science department, you should be called crop science and industry. If you are soil science department, you must either be soil science and industry or soil science and extension. Because without a desk available, your knowledge is sitting on the shelves, the feeding of the people is suffering. What is it when you satisfy the academia and they continue to cite and quote your works, and yet your people are hungry. To fill one of these gaps, for the first time in many years, our government saw the need to intervene in agriculture by what we now know as planting for food and jobs. There's information asymmetry. None of our commercial banks can go to the rural areas and assess properly the financial needs of a small-scale farmer who has only 2 hectares of land, or who is willing to plant only 2 hectares of land. And even if you try to do that, the distance will not allow you to do a good assessment. They do not have records, they do not have accounting records, they cannot satisfy the needs of the financiers. Therefore, somebody must fill that gap. Agric took it upon itself to start 1.5 years ago to go to the farmers, put them together in smaller groups, provide for them what is supposed to be the funding, hybrid seed and fertilizer. In some few cases, we provided some agrochemicals. That way, the first factor I mentioned was met. The next stage is technical, which is technology transfer. In the technology word is hybrid seed, because without the good seed, the starting point is wrong. So we provided them hybrid seed, we provided extension services on our own. They went to the farmers, met them in the town halls, met them at the farm levels, taught them what they should do to come in tune with today's technology. The history was that in the northern region, yields were as high as 4.4 metric tons per hectare, instead of our traditional 1.1 to 1.5 metric tons per hectare. The following year, we decided to do even better. What did we take upon ourselves? We wanted to escalate this to at least a 3,000 hectare area. And in doing that, we needed help. We needed funding. On our own, we were able to do about 1,500 hectares. Then we went to planting for food and jobs to seek help. A branch of planting for food and jobs under one Mr. Kluche Kudomo Youth in Agric program provided a seed, a hybrid seed. And then they gave us some fertilizer, which was not sufficient for the full protocol for the pioneer seed we were using. So we added more fertilizer ourselves. The story this year is that the first few farmers that harvested around the Brown Hafo and Ashanti region, we are recording between 36 bags, mini bags, to 39 mini bags per hectare. That is in excess of 4 metric tons per hectare. If we can do this, if you can do this across the country, then we'll become the food basket for West Africa. It is very simple, but you must be determined to do it. I will not take too much time because I think the moderator is looking at the clock, but everybody here knows that William cannot speak in 5 minutes. The other thing we must then be looking at that, what do we do to have a ready market for the produce from this good understanding and good venture? There is no way we can depend on the human consumption to feed on all the grains that we are going to produce. It means that there must be an end user, a final consumer. The final consumer in grains in particular had always been poultry and livestock industry. Unfortunately, this is an industry, the poultry portion has run down from 1990 to this time and is at its knees begging for help. If we do not have another program to support the planting for food and jobs, which will be the end user end for poultry industry, then we will soon get to that situation where our barns will be filled and the farmers will not return to farming. We saw it in cocoa production. We cut some of the cocoa trees and we cultivated banana. I am begging that this time we should quickly begin to put a program in place for poultry industry so that it will become the end user of the produce from the planting for food and jobs. I would again conclude by saying that once there's a market, once there's the know-how, once there's funding, our agriculture can grow very fast and catch up with the rest. There are many opportunities in there for private sector enterprises like my company, Agric Limited. We will take advantage, we will produce cheaper feed, give it to the poultry farmers so they can then go and produce cheaper chicken and compete what is coming from outside. To conclude, we must look at these issues together, not in part, so that eventually we can solve the food needs of our people. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. William Awuku Ahiadome. It's well said, and I agree that all of us would work together to ensure that your sector, that is the feed sector, grows up to support us through the value chain. I have the pleasure to welcome the Honorable Robert Ahomka-Lindsay to join us. He is part of the panel, but he's not yet to speak. He is the Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry. But next in the line to speak to us, and unfortunately we are running out of time, and I will urge him to speak for 3 minutes, is Dr. Baba Nibel Tieto, Chief Operating Officer, SADA.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome, Doc.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and colleagues in the agribusiness sector. True to your word, for business people, time is money, so I'll stick to the time as much as I can. SADA is a public sector institution set up to perform a very, very single but important role to catalyze development in the Savannah zone, the northern part of Ghana, northern Upper East and Upper regions, the northern parts of Volta region, and the northern parts of Brong-Ahafo region. And planting for food and jobs is a very, very bold attempt by the government to do what everybody has been waiting for. The last time something similar like this happened was many years ago when we were still kids. Then military government had put in something called Operation Feed Yourself, but then it was not at the magnitude of this. Planting for food and jobs is very, very bold, and it has happened in other countries before with very, very tremendous results. When Malawi was faced with food shortages, they implemented exactly a variant of planting for food and jobs with astonishing results. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that planting for food and jobs is going to gain astronomical results. How is SADA and other organizations going to help catalyze the results of planting for food and jobs? Every business requires very reliable information. So SADA, as part of its functions, is providing credible, reliable information for investors in the agricultural sector. You can now have, the last speaker mentioned soil suitability maps. Now you can have user-friendly soil suitability or land suitability maps done for across the SADA zone. So if you are an investor, you will not have to be doing thumb sucking to find out where you can grow what. The maps are available, and that's freely available to any investor. Secondly, an investor would need to know where farmers are and what they produce. So we've developed an elaborate farmer registration software that will be launched very soon in support of the Ministry for Food and Agriculture to register farmers. The Honorable Minister for Agriculture is holding this very dear to his heart, that he wants farmers registered, and SADA is going to lend support to that initiative. SADA has also zoned the value chains. So you would know where rice has a better comparative advantage than other crops, where you can appreciably grow vegetables, where you can grow rice, and where you can grow soya. So we have got 6 value chain zones, all mapped out, and some of our partners and the partners of government like African Development Bank is utilizing these zones, these agricultural zones, value chain zones for their programming. Last but not the least in getting information is that we have a land bank system. Usually when an investor comes in, the investor does not have time to go around talking to chiefs for land and going through the laborious process of getting land. So SADA is establishing land banks that are available for investors. When they come in, we can show them the land, show them the suitability, show them what value chains are better compared to other ones in that particular zone, and pronto we get to business. We have also put in place infrastructure plans, dams, and that's going to support the government's damming process, damming program to ensure that water is available, especially in dry parts of the country so that farming can be all year round. So we have got all the infrastructure plans done for many dams, and I can just cite a few of them. As you drive toward after Wali Wali, where the Honorable Deputy Minister comes from, there's a Kwalugu Dam, and all the plans are done and ready. By the way, I need to acknowledge the support that we've got from our donor partners. For instance, the World Bank assisted the government and SADA to develop the value chain zoning plans. In addition to that, SADA recognizes that farm energy is very, very crucial. You will find out that to have irrigation, you need to pump the water in some instances. Of course, we have a very good national electricity grid system, but electricity becomes expensive day in and day out. The government is doing everything that it can to bring down the tariffs. But then we need to supplement the energy sources. So we're looking at solar farms. So SADA has got plans for solar farms and working with investors to develop these. Last but not the least, Mr. Chair, I can see you looking in my direction. We're looking at establishing agro-poles, again with investor partners. Agro-poles are more or less demo agricultural investment farms or investment sites. And they will differ from the demonstration farms you see in some research stations, in that these are demos that are business inclined. So ladies and gentlemen, if there's any investor here willing to invest in agriculture, we have all the information that you need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Doctor. From his presentation, we all have to attest to the great potentials in agriculture. We have comparative advantage in agriculture. But why are we not competitive in agriculture? We have not invested adequately in this sector to make the sector competitive. So for us to be able to have competitive advantage, then we must invest more. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to welcome my colleague, Honorable Robert Ahomka Lindsay, Deputy Minister, Trade and Industry. In 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I hope this microphone is on. Is it on? You can hear me. Wonderful. First of all, let me apologize for being late. I had a conflicting event, and I did tell the organizers, so they should let you know that I would be rushing here the minute that was done. An equivalent important is a session on trading across borders, making it easier for us. I will limit my remarks to, in the brief remarks, to the discussion, some of the hearings I've had, what it is that within trade industry we are so focused on. There are a couple of key interventions that we think about when we look at agriculture, and in particular the planting for food and jobs and its integration within trade and industry's strategy. And the government. The government of Ghana's clear strategy is the industrial transformation of our country. The country is predominantly an agricultural producing country. Therefore, when you think about agriculture, you think about industrial transformation, it is clear. But how do we want to do that? It's done very simply. We have to ensure all of our farming community, small and large, are part of a commodity and value chain, a commodity value chain. So, as you grow, the relationship will work between ourselves within trade industry and agriculture. As they grow products, we must ensure that we have the industry to buy them. We need to ensure that communication is two ways. So, whether we're talking about cane, whether we're talking about fresh produce in terms of sugar, whatever we're talking about, we need to make sure that there's a clear discussion across board to make sure that what is being grown is what industry wants, and the amount being grown is what industry wants. Industry provides the appropriate support to that entities to allow them to grow what they need to do to ensure that synergy. How is that reflected? If you look currently at one of our flagship programs, the One District, One Factory, it gives a huge opportunity. As of yesterday, for instance, out of the 165 businesses that we have analyzed so far that are ready, in our opinion, to be rolled out, 47% of those are agro-processing companies. That means these are agro-processing companies that are looking to source raw materials, and this source is important. Now listen to one or two of the points said. It's not about just one single crop, because that would not feed a factory that has a capacity of 500 metric tons an hour. So it's a game changer. It's a transformation, how we engage. But it offers huge opportunity for those that want to be part of that value chain. And whatever we do, as we encourage and redefine agriculture in this country, we must make sure it's a part of a value chain. And that value chain is linked to many aspects of within trade industry we look to support. One of it, of course, is the industrial transformation process. The second one is the establishment and operation of a commodity exchange to try and ensure that that interchange between the entities, those that are growing, those that are buying, we create a mechanism to allow the efficient use of those areas. I want to mention three other. I know it's a little short, but I'm happy to answer questions. I heard about poultry. Yes. This Thursday, I'm meeting with Daco Farms, who anybody in this country knows was the pioneers of poultry in this country. It is our key objective to revive that sector. Not only revive it, but to really champion it. I understand we import close to 250 million birds a year, and we have less than 1% capacity to engage. I heard about insurance. As you'll be aware, we're working very closely with the Bank of Ghana on the Ghana Insurance Scheme, which is designed to try and encourage banks and financial institutions to lend to agriculture by providing insurance against what you may call environmental risk. And so this is a program we are working on very clearly. I heard a little bit about value chain and ensuring that investment opportunities are there. If you look at the magnitude of what we need to do to agricultural production versus what we need to do to achieve our industrial transformation agenda, of which a significant element will be agricultural processing, then the opportunities are clear. Time is short. I will be happy to go into more detail, but you've said brief, so I will respect that request. As a fellow deputy minister, how can I possibly not?
An applause, an applause, an applause.
Thank you again.
Let's give him an applause. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry. Thank you, Dr. Baba Tieto from SADA. Thank you, Mrs. Leticia Osafo-Addo, Chief Executive Officer of Samba Foods. And thank you, Mr. Tom Gambra, Founder and Managing Director of Premium Foods Limited. Thank you, Mr. William Awoku Ahiadome, Managing Director, Agric Ghana Limited. Unfortunately, it's as if an imam has delivered a khutbah in a Friday prayer. So, unfortunately, we are not going to be able to ask questions because we have run out of time. I thought I would have given the opportunity to the audience to ask questions, and we could also ask some more probing questions, but we have run out of time. And I just want to thank everybody here for listening attentively to us and taking notes for us to continue the discourse in the course of the day, and to implore our development partners and civil society organizations here that the government is determined to create an enabling environment to ensure that the agricultural value chain works, to ensure that we realize the growth and development that this country deserves. And in the course of that, I believe strongly that we will be doing some policies that some people may think they are distortionist. But I just want to plead that when that happens, you should support us, because we will get out of those distortions and everything will fall in shape. Thank you very much for coming.
So put your hands together once again for the panelists. They've done so well. At least we have a couple of takeaways. I'm sure each and everyone has one. Say $500,000 to Crop Research Institute in 3 years would reduce a lot of rice imports. So thank you very much. This brings us to the end of the panel discussion. Thank you to Honorable Babangi, Dr. Babangi, the moderator, Dr. Tueti, and Mrs. Letitia Osafuado, Tom Gambra, William Mahiadome, and Mr. Ahomka Lindsay. We have the Vice President in the House, alongside the U.S. Ambassador to Ghana. So let's step out for just 10 minutes, stretch a little bit, and come back. Because we are supposed to have started this session, which the next one at 10:45 exactly, but it's now about 10:50. So we are a bit late. So let's stretch for about 10 minutes and come back, and then listen to the Vice President alongside the U.S. Ambassador to Ghana. Thank you very much. So let's stop for about 5-10 minutes. So we'll come back at 11 o'clock exactly, please.
Stimulating discussions there on the floor of the Movenpick Ambassador Hotel, where the agribusiness panel discussion was taking place. We just heard the Deputy Trade and Industry Minister, Robert Ahomka-Lindsay, end that session. He was encouraging agriculturists or farmers specifically, to produce what industry needs if they want industry to plug into their sector. Very interesting discussions there. They are currently on a break, and when they come back, the Agric Minister, Dr. Osei Akoto, is expected to present a policy paper on the Planting for Food and Jobs program. Also, Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Baumia is expected to speak also at the same event. So it's going to be a packed day, and it will be live here on the Joy News channel. For now, we'll take a quick breather, after which we'll take another look at some sectors of the agric industry here in Ghana.